Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome back to the Arturia CMI-V tutorial series. This is the last episode in the series. We're going to do preset deep dive number 3 today. I've really enjoyed deconstructing this synth. So many of my favourite albums from the early to mid 80s were made using this thing that it's been an absolute joy to find out how it works under the hood. If you've enjoyed this series as well and you want to help support me make more content like this, please check out the Patreon link in the description below. Or alternatively, you can click the join button to become a YouTube channel member. So today I've picked the low lac preset, and this is what it sounds like. We've got an evolving sound. You can see all sorts of stuff going on with the loop points. And there's almost kind of a train track sort of thing going on in the background. Plenty to go out there. I'm going to mute soundscape number 2 just for the moment because spectral is a really simple sound and we can deal with it pretty quickly. That on its own sounds like this. That's a pretty simple sound. I'll just make it a bit louder. Now I've done a CMI map. So I'll be able to basically paste that into the video in the post edit so that it's not constantly messing around with my screens. But as you can see, we've got the spectral sound on slot number 2. Well, both effects are sending to the auxiliary send. We'll have a quick look at that. It's a reverb. So this is on C1. Everyone knows what a reverb sounds like, pretty straightforward. On C2 and C3, we've got vibrato depth and vibrato speed. Make it a bit louder. And I just hit the key harder there because we've also got voice level mapped to velocity, as you can see. So that's quite a sweet spot for the vibrato depth. On the master modulation wheel, we've got, you can see the filter coming up. So that's a bit more interesting. All those higher harmonics causing distortion. So it's a nice sound, it's pretty. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I want to look at sound number 1. So let's toggle those across and concentrate on soundscape 2. This is where the good stuff is. Now there's quite a few effects going into making that sound, and it's a little bit difficult to pick them apart. In order to really see what's going on, we need to have a look at the functions page. Let's have a look at it from the perspective of the assigned mapping first. So we've got loop start on function A and loop length on function D, but we've also got a couple of filters on B and C, and they're kind of getting in the way. So what I'm going to do, just for the moment, is take both of them out of the picture. We'll worry about what the filters are doing later. I just want to concentrate on the sample playback itself, and it's a little bit difficult to hear the underlying sample if they're being heavily filtered. So now you can hear the underlying sample being played, but you can also see this loop getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it snaps to a smaller size. From this point onwards, it's going to stick at this smaller width, even when we get to the end of the sample. Oh, listen to this. So you get a kind of really distorted, nasty thing as basically the loop gets squashed at the end. But now it's stuck on that particular segment width. That is 19 segments wide. That's the minimum width specified by loop length. So the modulation is making the loop bigger, but it's never going smaller than 19 segments. So why do we get this bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and then snaps back to the narrowest width? Well, function D tells that story. So if I press a key, here's the loop start getting wider and wider. But when it gets to the end of the function, because we're in one-shot mode here, it's done. There is no more modulation to apply. And so it snaps back to its default value, which is the loop length plugged into the interface. But we've also got modulation being applied to loop start. In fact, you can still see it in the background. That's constantly cycling. And so that should be telling you that this is on a different kind of function. This is on a looping function. And now we can see every 8 bars. I don't know if I said this is 4 bars. So on function A, which is an 8-bar cycle, which is looping, but it's still going to trigger every time I press a key. It's going to trigger back to the start again. I'll just let it get a little bit ahead, and then it pulls back to the beginning. But once that key's pressed, this is now going to evolve. So this is moving the loop start forward in time, which is causing that evolution effect, and obviously after 4 bars the width snaps shut. So we're getting a different part of the loop being played over the course of time. Really nice interaction between those two functions. Okay, now that we've got that kind of under our fingers, we understand how the evolution of the sample is occurring. Now let's try to bring in the filtering. So for this, I'm going to throw the sound away, get back to it, mute spectral, but this time in the assign page, I'm going to disable loop start and length, and I'm going to put loop length at something nice and hefty. So it's basically just going to play the sample back now, but we've still got those 2 filter effects being applied. So it's playing the entire sample, and you're really hearing that's what the sample sounds like at its native level. Let's have a look at functions B and C. So B is a descending filter on a loop at 16th. C, exactly the same shape, but this time 4 times slower. And they're both applying to the same effect. So function B is operating at 28%. Function C is operating at -30%. So those 2 things are pulling against each other, and you can see in the background the poor old filter control having a nightmare of a time. And that's what's causing that sort of trains going over the train track effect. We pull one of those right down. So now you're primarily hearing function B doing its 16th thing and function C evolving much more slowly. Let's flip them over, make that really slow, and this one fast. So because they're going in opposite directions, but one of them is still 4 times faster than the other, you get this superb interaction between the 2 filter controls. While all of that modulation is happening, the sample's also moving through time, so you're getting a different slice of the loopback being played, which causes all of those wonderful interplay effects. So I think having dealt with each aspect of that modulation pair individually, now let's bring all 4 back in and start talking about it a little bit more holistically again. Now I said when it gets to the end, there's a curious effect where the loop basically gets squashed to nothing, and you get a little bit of distortion right at the end. If you didn't want that, if you wanted to allow the sound to evolve more smoothly without that distortion occurring, that wouldn't be a problem. We can get rid of it. Because the sample start modulates all the way to the end, that's what's squashing the loop. If I pull this down a little bit, and I did this beforehand, and I've figured out that about 9.6 there or thereabouts is going to have the effect. And so now when we get that thing playing again, it's going to evolve the sample. I keep saying sample start, don't I? It's loop start. When we evolve the loop start right to the very end, it's going to stop about here. Now we've already got to the stage where we're at our fixed width, and so if I loop back round on the sample about here, we never get that distortion effect. So that's a really easy fix if that's a problem for you. And all I'm really doing here is kind of stretching and pulling different aspects of the preset to see, well, this is the stuff that you're teaching me as the preset, you know, how does this synthesizer make good sounds? But what if I want to get rid of that distortion effect? One of the other what ifs that I thought about was, well, all of this interesting stuff is going on with the filter. What happens if we change the center point of the filter itself, the anchor? Because that's all quite bright and it's very nice. But if I pull this down, we get a much more kind of throbbing, hypnotic effect. And so I thought, well, it might be quite nice to map a function to that. And we can use a function preset. If I use the triangle preset and assign it to function E, I'm going to make this nice and slow. And now assign function E to the filter. Oh, I'll just put it back where it was, up at the top. And now I'm going to use function E to pull it back. So this is basically going to be the minimum anchor point around which that modulation applies. Let's see what that does. So now all of this toggling and crazy kind of random modulation that the B and C are applying to it is being overall dragged left and right. You can see that happening here. That's causing quite a stereo effect there. I preferred it slow. The last thing that I thought was interesting to have a bit of a play with on this sound was the relationship between those triggers on the loops. So I wanted to have a quick look at the difference between the retrig modes. So loop start, which is function A, the really slow one, is in mono, whereas function D, which is dealing with the loop length, is poly, which means that each time I press a note, if I play legato, if I bring notes into a chord, each of those sample lengths, those loop lengths, is going to be allowed to carry on evolving until it reaches its snap point and then, you know, comes back. So here's a C on its own. Now a legato G, and you can see the C was carrying on evolving. Let the C go, and that was the G snapping back to a different evolution point. Each one of these notes has got a different loop length. If I play exactly the same thing with each note individually, here's the C, there's the G, starting its own brand new journey, and each one has its own evolving loop start and length. Really fabulous sound. It's kind of hypnotic. I've just been sat here while I was learning the preset, just holding individual notes down and hearing the wonderful interplay between those different, particularly the functions B and C, the two filters operating in different directions. That's the takeaway stuff. When I do a preset deep dive like this, I'm trying to learn stuff that's going to help me build presets myself. And when I find something like that, squirrel it away in your and your kind of your mental cache of cool things to do. Tiny addendum right at the end. I was just about to jump into my wrap up, but I just realized this entire thing is also playing 2, 3 minor thirds. So the soundscape is tuned essentially 3 semitones higher by setting the mapping 3 semitones lower. Let's play them flat first. And now I'll pull the soundscape down. And there's the minor third, the contrast between those two notes. We haven't heard that because we separated the two sounds out very early on in the deconstruction of the preset, but worth saying that you've got that extra minor third colour by the key mapping as well. And that's the end of the series. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit like, and I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot.